Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I do hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this Saturday's second upload. This upload gets us closer to Saturday Nightmares, live from upstate New York. That is our live stream every Saturday, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a lot of fun sharing experiences and theories. It is unlike any other live stream in the cryptid and paranormal community, I can guarantee you that. Before we jump into this upload, though, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's second upload, shall we? Okay, so update on the Gila National Forest / encounter. So about a year ago, a subscriber and his dad, or both are subscribers, reached out to me, and the father's name is Robert, and the son is Robert also. They just call him JR or Junior. JR was an avid outdoorsman, always enjoyed hiking, camping, anything in the wilderness, anything to do with the wilderness he was involved in. From the time of being a young boy, being in like Cub Scouts, all the way up to being a Boy Scout. He was a skilled rock climber. Actually, Robert himself, back in the day, was a skilled rock climber as well. And just really decent people, really good people. Robert Sr. had put me in contact with a few people. Junior's experience, he was hiking in the Gila National Forest region, and he was pretty deep in the area. He had parked down a ways from the entrance to the cave dwelling area, and he was a couple miles in, so it wasn't a quick trip in, a quick trip out. And what happened was he had heard some kind of strange noises. He proceeded to kind of hide himself, and he ended up backtracking because he wanted to find out what these noises were. What he heard was kind of an animal in pain, a lot of growling, a lot of fighting. And what he thought was possibly a poacher or something had, shot a wolf or a bear or something, and he wanted to check it out. So he ends up backtracking on this trail that he was on, a very remote trail, not one that's traveled often. And what he sees is this
enormous Dogman involved in just a battle for its life. It was getting attacked by a small group of crawler that were coming out of this cave. A lot of the Gila National Forest is just a lot of beautiful rock walls and a lot of natural caves. There are some man-made ones, the Gila cave dwellings. What he saw was, it appeared, almost like a small ant colony, keep coming out of this hole. One goes back in, another comes back out, almost like refreshing themselves as they are taking this Dogman out in numbers, superiority by numbers. Eventually, what he saw, this Dogman was not losing easily. It had smashed one or two of these crawlers, causing damage, but with the constant refreshing of crawler and the multiple on this creature, it didn't really stand a chance. At the end, he saw them get the better of the Dogman, and just like a small ant colony, they pulled the Dogman into this kind of subterranean labyrinth that they live in. That freaked him out, and he proceeded to jog down this trail, all the way hearing kind of something fouling him in the distance, but not too far in the distance. Also not using the ground. So he believes that maybe one or two crawler were using the trees to possibly attack him or escort him out. We've all heard of experiences, I mean, I have, and I'm sure many of you have, of like Bigfoot being a dominant in its environment and not causing any kind of physical pain or damage to a human, but almost escorting them out of the woods. Like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. Let me show you the way out to your car. And that's what it could have been. He doesn't know. He had gone back up to get some dirt and see if he could find any kind of fragmented hair or tissue samples. His dad, Robert Sr., told me he had sent them out to me. I did not. I had a tracking number, and I watched. I used the same process as I used for Meeker, Colorado. I watched the tracking number get closer and closer, and when it reached a certain location, it kind of just disappeared. So I don't know if it was apprehended or if it was lost. I don't know. Robert Sr., also being a longtime resident of that area, knows the former sheriff. He knows a lot of people up there. There's a small mining operation out there. He had heard from people he knows about a very strange incident that occurred on the mine's property witnessed by two security guards. And what he ended up seeing, or these two security guards ended up seeing, they are in their kind of security office. Not a very big office, probably the size of this room that I'm in. And they hear some commotion and they look out the window. What they see is what they think is a huge wolf. And it had one of these crawlers in its jaw, kind of running with it. They thought that this wolf, they thought first that it was just a large wolf and that possibly it had stolen a baby, because it was a small, not a very large crawler. I don't think they get very large anyway. I think the max I've ever heard of one is being like 6 feet, 6.5 feet, which is bigger than I at 6.5 feet, but not bigger than a Dogman or a Bigfoot. So they immediately go out because they're like, what the hell? As they kind of go out, they hear these shrieks and shrills, and behind this Dogman, they notice these eye shines, and they see these crawlers coming out of the surrounding deserted area, pine and a lot of brush. They're in one of their trucks at the time. Shots are fired. The Dogman drops the crawler and takes off running. So now you've got security guards kind of trapped in a truck and multiple crawlers trying to get into the truck, possibly, more than likely, attack the security officers. And there's just a lot of other kind of crazy experiences that have happened out there. This is an experience that I'm going to share with you right now, is from a friend of Robert Sr. He honestly didn't know that his friend was into cryptids, and his friend didn't know that Robert was either. So throughout the years of Robert being raised here himself, his son, he knows a lot of people. And his friend, who is retired sheriff deputy, suggested that he talk to one of his friends who also grew up in the area but was about 10 years younger than Robert Sr., which would put him right in that age limit of near retirement. So in this area, a lot of caves, a lot of canyons. This man that this sheriff deputy introduced Robert Sr. to was a former Gila National Forest park ranger, but he was a guide for the cliff dwellings. He had always wanted to be a park ranger growing up in the area, having fond memories of camping, hiking, and whatnot in that same location, like JR and Robert Sr. So there's a couple different kind of breaks in the Gila River. There's Middle Fork and West Fork Gila River. In part of the middle river or part of the middle fork, you can actually walk, going hiking. You walk right through this river. It's probably a foot deep in some parts, deeper in others. Excuse me. So this former park ranger slash guide for the Gila cliff dwellings, we'll refer to him as excuse me. We'll refer to him as Stephen. And he had been camping out there for a couple of days. He was with his older brother, and something they did quite often. They are kind of north of the cliff dwelling region, a couple miles actually north of the cliff dwellings, and just camping and hiking. They both got, good sized packs on them. Anything they need, they have. Portable rods for fishing, the tent, you name it. They've got it for a couple days of what they planned on doing. They get to this region in this middle fork part of Gila River, and they start to walk through, because that's the way the trail goes. You literally have to walk up this water region. Sorry about that. I got a frog in my throat tonight for some reason. So they're on this portion of the trail, which they have to walk through this kind of really shallow part of the river. And all along the sides of them are these small little cave openings, created by nature, not man-made by Native Americans, possibly lived in by Native Americans hundreds and thousands of years ago. But they had this feeling like they are being watched. Stephen feels it first. He doesn't say anything to his brother. But he really feels like, hey, something is wrong. I feel like something's watching us, or someone's watching us. They haven't come across any other hikers nor campers in quite some time, which was a rarity. And they just keep walking, they both, after a while, as they're walking, Steven says something to his brother like, hey, I've got this kind of weird feeling, like we're being watched. Do you think possibly we're in danger? And the brother says, I've got that feeling as well, but don't worry about it. We're good. So they get to this area where the trail kind of comes out, and they can actually camp, or set up camp along the river. So they're camping right like 25, 30 feet from this, shorelined river. It's absolutely gorgeous, but there's no beach or anything. It's just small little river pebbles and such. And they set up their camp because, it's getting near dark. They wanted to have a chance to get a fire pit set up, set their camp up, start dinner, and just relax. They'd been hiking for quite a while that day. And plus their nerves were kind of just shaken because of the feeling of being watched. So they then make dinner, and they don't hear anything. They can hear the water. They don't hear any kind of nature's wildlife in the nighttime, which is rare because, usually you're going to hear owl or any kind of varmint, whatever. But they don't hear anything. They hear the river. And they start to notice that. They start talking about that, like how weird it was to feel like they were watched all day. And now it's almost like minus the river, nothing else is around them. Both are aware of the silence. There actually is a science studying this silence that predators create when they're around. So they're both like, all right, they don't have a firearm with them. We're talking early 80s. And, they've got knives. They've got probably a hatchet. Nothing major. No kind of serious weapons. Wooden hiking sticks. And so they're like, they've never needed it. They've never needed any kind of weapon before. They eat their dinner and they settle in for the night. They get in their tent and they proceed to go to bed. Well, sometime in the night, the older brother wakes Stephen up and says, something is outside of our tent right now. I can hear them walking. It's not any kind of small varmint like raccoon. It's not a bear. It's not anything that it sounds like a human. And so Stephen lays there. The brother's talking to him kind of at a whisper, like right up close to him. They're already in a small tent anyway. And they're listening and Stephen can hear it. So where their tent is, the back part of their tent where their heads are is against or not butted right up, but there's a space between a rock cliff rock wall and their tent. Very narrow. So almost too narrow for Stephen or his brother to even walk through the back part. What freaks them out the most and really puts them on edge is when they hear something right behind Stephen's laying there on his, in his sleeping bag, brother's in his sleeping bag talking to him, and they hear it right by their heads. Just walking, no breathing, no heavy panting, and strange enough, very faint footsteps where if you were walking on this river pebble, even barefoot, because they had been barefoot while they were walking through the shallow part of the river, you hear the rocks, like a clicking. I'm sure all of you know what I'm talking about. And they hear that, but it's really, they know it's right here, like right here, but it sounds like it's further away because of how faint it is. As it's right behind them, they then hear kind of something on both sides of them walking. And they formulate this plan of, we're sitting ducks in this tent right now. What do we do? What how are we going to get out of here? Our hiking sticks are just outside of our tent by the fire. We have our knives with us in the packs, but what if this is a couple of guys with guns? You know, what if it's, you know, some druggies that think we have money, or homeless people, and that are going to attack us? That's nothing else is coming to mind. So the brother says, listen, we're going to have to get out of here. We're going to have to jump out. We're going to have to, you know, stay side by side in case it is someone that wants to hurt us. But you have to do exactly as I do. So quietly put your boots on. As quiet as possible, with less movement as possible. Once your boots are on, get your knife. We'll unzip quick and run out. And what we'll do is we'll get to the fire pit and kind of turn. And that way, even though we don't have an advantage on them, we at least have our back to the water. So as they are running out, they know that whatever is out in front of them, they can see that. They're not going to be able to see what's behind them as they're running out or to the sides. But when they turn at that fire pit, there's only 10, 15 feet of land until the water. So they're like, we have a natural kind of barrier with the river. So let's just jump out as fast as we can and turn around and spin around and confront whoever is out there messing with us. So they unzip the tent and they make their break. And when they get out of the tent, they run as fast as they can. The fire is still embered, but it's summertime, and there's no clouds, there's no, you know, any kind of light pollution, so it's bright enough to where they can see the moon is out, but it's not a full moon. They can see detail because, one, they didn't have a flashlight on when they were in their tent, so their eyes have already adjusted to the dark. They get to the fire pit where their walking sticks are, and they're just, you know, your basic wooden stick where you can club somebody with it, you know, like something like behind me, not decorated, but and they're looking, you know, they could see straight ahead. They don't see anything by the river. Now they're looking, they can see their tent. But they can't see any kind of person or animal around. And they both look at each other, and the brother, Steven's brother, pulls out his flashlight, one of those kind of not your plastic flashlights from the 80s, but the metal kind of. My grandma had one. It was metal, and you know, in the 80s, Star Wars was huge. It looked like the lightsaber bottom. And it had the little clip that you could hang it on. Very not bright at all, and he clicks his light on. And as he clicks his light, they see this movement off to the side, kind of, and he's looking, and they're both like got their sticks kind of like this, looking around. they hear the movement behind the tent and to the side, so they swing over there. And what they see on this side is what we know as a crawler. It's about 5.5, 6 feet tall, very skinny, this pasty, kind of fleshy toned. And that, the one right here, kind of takes off and goes not straight up the wall, but almost an odd run into this cave area. And they hear more movement, and he's looking all around. And out from behind the tent comes the third one, the one that they could hear that was right behind them. And this one is on all fours. And this is interesting because how Robert told me, Robert got this from his friend, and then Robert told me. So, you know how when in these Hollywood movies, these monsters that are humanoid, they're not designed to be quadruped, but they walk quadruped and their hips are high up and just very odd. Like almost if you or I put our hands on the ground and tried to walk quadruped, we'd look very strange, and we wouldn't do it very delicately. When this came out from behind the tent, it was almost like its hips kind of disjointed. And he said that it moved feline-like. And it made this kind of like this shrill, this kind of shriek that reminded Stephen and his brother of a large cat, like a large feline. And they've got the light right on it so they can see it. It's 20 feet from them, if that. They're looking at this thing, and on quadruped, it's about max 2.5 feet. So that's how far its kind of hips disjointed. And it could move. It moved very quickly. And he said that when the other one went up that hill like that and into that cave, it didn't run bipedal. It did quadruped into the cave. Sorry for the sound effects. But they're looking at it and they can see its face. And they don't make out ears. But what they see are these eyes. And this is interesting because normally in any kind of description of these crawlers, their eyes are supposedly small or jet black and almost not a nose and kind of like this lipless mouth. Well, this thing's eyes reflected like this kind of whitish yellow back, but they could see color. They couldn't make out the color, but they could see color and they could see a pupil just by the light hitting its eyes. And they were a little larger than a human's eye. Not that much bigger, but a little larger. There was what appeared to be a small nose. Not human-like, but not just kind of flat and with like slits. As people describe, this had like a smaller kind of nose to it. But when it hissed and made that shriek, they saw that its mouth opened, and it wasn't big until it did that shriek. And they saw these teeth, almost like pins, but thicker. And it appeared that there were multiple rows of it in its mouth. And it almost looked like its mouth kind of jutted out a little, like when it made that noise. And as it did that, it looked like it was going to charge at them. But instead it shot the other way, where not the one that went to the cave, but the one that went into the wooded area over this way did on the opposite side of the tent. That leaves them guys, Stephen and his brother, standing here like, what the hell did we just see? They're talking about it like, what was that? What do we do? We've got about another 6 hours of darkness. They decide they've got some firewood, not a lot, but they've got enough to where there's enough dead pine and scrub to collect and put in the fire to keep a small fire going for that time being until dawn breaks. And that's what they do. So as they're sitting by the fire, too afraid to go to their tent to get the rest of their stuff, and too afraid to even move, so they've got their back to the water and just looking out at them. I asked Robert, I said, well, why did they have their back to the water? Were they convinced that these things weren't going to go through the water? And he said, I don't know, to be honest. He said it just seemed like the smartest thing for them to do, because there were no other kind of ways of it getting behind them. They could see, there was no kind of cliffs over here, or walls, not cliffs, excuse me, I said it again. No walls and no scrub pine or, brush. It was just water. And if one were to come behind them, it would have to go through that water to where they could hear it better. Over the babbling of this very shallow part of the river right there. So as they're sitting there through the rest of the night, they hear these shrieks. They hear this, what they always thought was a fox or a kind of mountain lion sound. Once again, these guys have been camping in this area all their lives, hiking, camping, fishing, doing stuff with their dad, So they've heard what fox. They've heard supposed mountain lion. And now, after what they just saw, now they're hearing these noises of what they always associated with to be fox or a mountain lion or a bobcat, just something of nature. And these things are sounding just like what they always. So as they're sitting there talking, they're like, that sounds like a fox, They realize that these things are actually communicating with each other. You've got some on this side, and then you hear the echo from the one that went into that caved area. So finally, daybreak hits, and they can start seeing more around them as the morning keeps coming. And it was very eerie for both of them at one point when it was just starting to get bright. This man, Stephen, told Robert that was the scariest part of the night for him, was when the sun was just starting to come up, because it was still dark, and it was still dark over by the walled area where the caves were. and where the scrub and even to where their tent was. But because of where they were and the opening of the river area, the light was coming more there. And it got brighter and brighter. This whole time they can hear movement. Once, probably an hour before it started to really brighten up, is when these things stopped communicating with each other. They could hear the movement off to the side where the scrub pine and everything else were, but nothing on that walled side where the cave was. Once it got bright enough, they quickly broke down camp and proceeded to go back the way they came in. But where they were days. They were a good day and a half away from their vehicle. Hiking out, they had that feeling of we're being watched. They stayed right in the shallow part of the river on the way back. And then when they had to get into the trailed area is when they were really getting very scared, very terrified. At one point, when they got into the dirt, and it was kind of a damp, they saw these kind of strange prints. And it was not anything like an animal they had seen before. They saw kind of this indentation of where the heel would be, and kind of 3 long toes, like a 3 long toed foot with kind of this indent off to the side. Kind of like a dew cloth, like a dog would have. But the front, so whatever made these tracks was quadruped, not biped. The front was very different than the back. The front almost looked like a very narrow hand, but the finger/claw that was making the prints was almost 8 inches. So the front part was close to a good foot with the palm, and then the clawed part, the 3-toed foot, the back, was somewhere about 7 to 8 inches. So a big difference in length and size. They end up getting out. Steve's brother never, ever goes into the woods again. Never talks about it again. Never will shut Steve down if he even brings it up. Steve still wanted to pursue his passion, which was to be park ranger. He ended up becoming a guide for the Gila cave dwellings. And one thing that he clarified for Robert was, yes, whatever ancient Native American that lived there thousands of years ago, because I do believe that the Gila cliff dwellings are something like 6,000 years old. I may be wrong. So the Gila Cliff Dwelling National Monument in New Mexico contains dwellings that were inhabited from around 1280 AD to the early 14th century. The oldest dwellings found at the site date back to 100 AD, and the monument also contains evidence of use by the Cochise culture before 500 AD. So yeah, not 6,000 years old, like 600 years old. And he had actually, so yeah, 800 by the Mogollon culture, 800 years old, Mogollon culture. So, but he clarified what Robert remembered, because Robert remembered taking his son into the dwellings, and he remembers after JR told his dad what happened, Robert started thinking about things that he had seen and this and that. And there were pictures of, or hieroglyphs of, Native Americans with spears and very primitive hand tools or hand weapons. What appeared to be groups of Native Americans fighting off a group of oddly strange bipedal / quadruped humanoid looking things. And he said that there are multiple hieroglyphs, and the deeper you do go into some of the dwellings, that they do go deeper than the public are allowed to go to. But the deeper that you go is the oldest part, and there are some very interesting looking ones. There's one where he commented that there was what appeared to be a buffalo they always thought it was Native Americans, but now that Stephen has thought about it and put everything together throughout the years of him doing this, he thinks that it is a pack of crawlers taking down this buffalo, because the picture or the hieroglyph doesn't indicate any kind of tools or weapons. So very interesting stuff right there. Unfortunately, Stephen, like I said, the age, he had to retire early, about 15 years early, due to cancer. So that's why he no longer is a park ranger / guide for the Gila cave dwellings. But that's pretty insane with everything. If you think back to where JR saw these crawlers taking down the Dogman, and they just kept coming, one would come out fresh, the other one would go in. But on that one hieroglyph, it's like they're all on this buffalo taking it out. Very similar to how superiority by numbers. Doesn't matter how big you are, as long as there's 10 times more of you versus whatever. So these crawlers have been around for longer than what I thought. I used to think that these deep underground military bases, these things were created by, possibly our government / the alien agenda or the alien race that live under these cliffs and dwellings. The Lemurians, the reptilians, the Greys. But what's interesting is that that's not the case. Maybe they were created just by the reptilian or the Greys prior to humanity even helping create these domes. So, and also there is something like 5 deep underground military bases in the state of New Mexico. So it would make a lot of sense for these crawlers to be there in numbers, if in fact they were created by an alien race, or maybe some kind of offshoot alien race. Who knows?
And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's second upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I hope to see you all at the live stream, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.